Tonight, News Channel 5 uncovers new questions about whether Nashville DA Glenn Funk's office crossed the line using your tax dollars to help get the boss reelected. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rory Johnston.
And I'm Vicki Yates. A months-long investigation by Chief Investigative Reporter Phil Williams would eventually lead to damaging emails as well as evidence of a possible attempt to cover their tracks. This follows questions raised earlier this week about a part-time employee Funk had on the payroll, raking in $75,000 a year with little evidence of what the employee does for that money.
All right, Phil is with us. These new questions about campaign activities are obviously troubling because it's coming from the office that's in charge of enforcing the law.
That is absolutely correct. All of this stems from tips that emerged during Glenn Funk's campaign for re-election back in the spring, along with allegations of impropriety we had heard during the campaign itself.
Nashville, Tennessee, that's the place for me. That's where I want to be.
The celebration of Glenn Funk's election victory back in May.
Great victory. It's not really about me. It's about the work of the whole office over the last 8 years.
Followed a campaign that had been dogged by controversy from the beginning. Back in December, Funk and his employees hosted a holiday luncheon at the courthouse, his banners hanging throughout, bringing an accusation from opponent Sarah Beth Myers that the DA himself was violating a state law known as the Little Hatch Act.
That prevents public officials campaigning for office using government property to display campaign signs.
Those signs, which the DA had used for his campaign, he claimed weren't really campaign signs. They were office signs.
There is no campaign literature here. There will be no fundraising here. I'm not even going to ask for a vote today.
What is your plan?
Then during the campaign, when Funk was engaged in a candidates forum with his opponents,
I have with me today Christina Johnson.
The DA brought in first one of his employees, then a second one was enlisted to help answer the questions. And it happened again and again, all of it from government offices during the middle of the government workday. Funk insisted it wasn't an issue since those employees would be using vacation time. But then as early voting began, News Channel 5 Investigates had also received tips about DA employees being asked to work the polls for the boss, with not a lot of attention being paid to making sure they were taking that time off from work. Under DA office rules, all employees shall fill out a PTO report and have it approved and signed at least 5 days prior to their proposed vacation. So we set up surveillance throughout much of the early voting period, continuing through Election Day. Then on May 4th, we asked for the PTO forms. You can see the date they took off and then the date the forms were signed. We showed the results to retired state auditor Dennis Dicus.
The policy is not worth the paper it's written on.
Why is that?
They're not complying with it.
Take, for example, April 22nd, the day we spotted Funk aide Ken Whitehouse working an early voting location in Green Hills along with a candidate's wife. Swipe records show Whitehouse wouldn't show up at the office for days. And when we got his PTO records, that time off wasn't actually approved by his supervisor until May 5th, the day after we filed our request. On May 3rd, we had spotted the office spokesperson, former News Channel 5 anchor Steve Hayslip, working for the campaign, but his PTO would not be submitted for almost a month. Funk's office insists it's no big deal that people may have been working for the campaign without taking the days off until after we asked, saying when employees do take personal time off, this office does not split hairs over when they turn in PTO forms as long as they turn them in.
That's not what the policy says.
And if the PTO forms are approved after someone starts asking questions?
Well, first of all, they hadn't complied with their policy.
And we thank you tonight for...
Then there's Michael Joyner, a politically connected North Nashville pastor who had been hired by Funk. We had spotted Joyner working the polls day after day after day, the last time on Election Day. Funk's office gave us PTO forms documenting Joyner's vacation days when he was working on the campaign, including one showing that May 3rd was his last PTO day for the year, again signed nearly a month after we requested the records. But here's the thing, through sources in the DA's office, we knew these were not Michael Joyner's original PTO forms. These were the originals, and they showed he was running out of vacation days before he started working the polls. These, someone apparently created them just for us. So whose idea was that? We had hoped Michael Joyner could help answer that question.
And I feel kind of like you're pushing me as if I done something wrong.
No, I'm wondering who above you created
Okay.
these forms.
Well, you have to find that out on your own, because I didn't investigate that, and I didn't give you those papers, so I don't know what's on those papers.
This, for example, is one of Joyner's original PTO forms where he requested to be off on May 27th after the election. His calendar shows he was off that day, and payroll records show he got paid, even though he was supposedly out of days. But Funk's office would not give us that form and the other originals until after we warned that if they were destroying records, that could be a crime.
This is the first time I've seen two different set of papers.
And are these your signatures on both of them?
Yes, it is.
So how did that happen?
You got to ask them that.
Whose idea was it to create a second set of
I'm on my
PTO
way.
forms
There's never
for
been
Michael
two sets.
Joyner?
There's never been two sets of PTO forms.
But when we caught up with the DA, he insisted we weren't really seeing what we thought we were seeing.
There's always been a situation where people who have a PTO form request in, who change their mind about the way that they're going to be using their PTO, all that happens is they fill out a new form.
Your office went back and backdated a new set
We
of
have never
PTO
backdated
forms.
anything. Never.
But look at this. The original for some of the dates Joyner worked the polls was approved April 18th. The new one created by Funk's office, April 13th, a day that just happened to fit the PTO policy. If you as an auditor were to come across this, you would say,
We got to look at this. Yes, there's definitely a question here.
did you personally approve of creating the new set of forms?
We never backdate anything, and everything that was ever done by our office has just been under standard operating procedure.
But office insiders had given us flyers like this distributed around the DA's office urging employees to attend campaign events. We would also obtain government emails where Steve Hazlip was passing along so-called in-community campaign pictures. Those pics showed the boss visiting a local barber shop where people wore reelect Glenn Funk t-shirts. There was another office email about a DA candidate forum suggesting it would be great if there were some folks from the office present, one laying out talking points like a claimed 95% conviction rate for campaign materials, and one where Hazlip suggested a campaign message called Safe City.
Keeping our families safe matters.
A version of which would eventually make it to air.
Is this on the District Attorney General's computer system?
It is.
What's inappropriate? You're not supposed to have political activity and whatnot on a public computer.
No question about it.
No question about it.
And that, the retired state auditor said, could raise questions about potential violations of state law. This raises questions that someone else should investigate.
Absolutely.
Now, here's what we don't know about all of this. Are these reports being reworked before being given to us just an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern? Still, as you heard, General Funk says he doesn't see a problem with any of this.
It's a lot to take in. So I understand we have questions now about government resources being used for this campaign, and also questions about the employee charging taxpayers under some questionable circumstances.
And obviously a DA can't investigate themselves, so who will answer these questions?
Well, that's a great question. Under state law, it would be the Tennessee Attorney General. So are those questions on his radar right now? We don't know.
Keep following, though.
Absolutely.
Bill, thank you.